Imagine paying for a game, downloading the entire thing, seeing it installed on your console, and still being told you cannot launch it. Not because the game is broken, not because the console is damaged, not because the disc is missing, because a server somewhere else cannot confirm that you have permission to play. That became a real problem for Xbox players on July 27th. Xbox acknowledged that some users were encountering errors while trying to sign in, view their game libraries, and launch games. The disruption affected several parts of the platform, including accounts, the store, subscriptions, games, applications, and license verification. For some players, this meant losing access to online features. For others, it meant watching installed games refuse to open. Reports also included single-player games and some disc-based titles failing when they still depended on an account check, a downloaded entitlement, or another online requirement. One of the most visible errors was 0x87E107DF. That code was not telling players that the game files had vanished. It was telling them that the system could not validate the license required to launch them. And that distinction is the entire story. Modern gaming has made access easier than ever. You can purchase a game without leaving the house. You can install it remotely. Your saves can follow you through the cloud. A subscription can provide hundreds of games for one recurring payment. Updates can repair problems without requiring a new physical copy. But those conveniences have also changed what stands between a player and the game. It is no longer only the console, the storage drive, and the copy that was purchased. It can also be the account, the platform service, the license server, the designated home console, the cached entitlement, the subscription status, the publisher account, and the rules determining whether the local files are allowed to run. Most days, players never see this system. They press a button and the game starts. That smooth experience makes digital ownership feel simple. An outage reveals all the invisible conditions behind it. The Xbox disruption was temporary. It was not evidence that Microsoft permanently erased purchases. It did not affect every game, console, or player in exactly the same way. Some users recovered earlier than others, and some games continued functioning through offline configurations. But a temporary failure can still reveal a permanent design decision. The files can be inside your console, while the authority to use them remains somewhere else. This is why the outage matters after the servers recover. It turns the ownership debate from a philosophical argument into a practical question. What did the player actually purchase? A digital purchase is not imaginary. It provides a legitimate license to use the game under the platform's terms. That license can remain attached to the account for years and can often be downloaded again after changing consoles. But a license is not the same thing as unrestricted control. The player owns access within a system. The platform operates the system. When the platform cannot verify that relationship, the player can temporarily lose the ability to use something that has already been paid for. That does not mean digital games are a scam. It means digital access depends on infrastructure, and the more gaming moves away from complete physical products, the more important that infrastructure becomes. The first question is why a single-player game stored locally needs a network at all. To understand that, we have to separate the game files from the permission to launch them. Downloading a digital game places the required data on the console. Purchasing it places an entitlement on the account. Xbox then uses account and device licenses to determine where the game can be played and by whom. The home Xbox system is one important part of that model. When a console is designated as the home Xbox for an account, other profiles on that console can access many of the account's games and subscriptions. The designation also allows many digital games to function offline. This is valuable during normal use, and especially important during an outage. But the protection is not universal. The setting must usually exist before the service failure. The game may need to have been launched or authenticated previously. Some games require their own servers. Some depend on external publisher accounts. Some require downloaded content that is not present locally. Subscription access has additional conditions. A second console that is not designated as the home Xbox may rely more heavily on active account authentication. That is why two players with the same game can experience the same outage differently. One presses play and enters the game. The other receives a license error. One household has the console properly designated and the license already cached. Another household shares libraries across several machines and suddenly discovers which console the platform considers primary. The outage was the same. Their level of preparation was not. This becomes even more complicated when a player owns a physical disc. The traditional assumption is simple. Digital games depend on servers. Physical games live on the disc. Therefore, buying the disc protects the player. Sometimes that is true. A complete game stored on a disc can preserve local data, provide resale value, allow lending, and remain useful after a digital store stops selling that title. A physical copy can create a level of independence that a subscription cannot provide. But physical packaging no longer guarantees that the entire playable product is inside the box. Some discs contain a complete version that can be installed and played offline. Some contain only part of the data. Some require a large download. Some need a day one update to function properly. Some require online activation. Some depend on an external account. Some are tied to multiplayer or publisher services. And some boxes contain only a download code. This is why reports of disc-based games failing during the Xbox outage mattered. The disc could prove that the player possessed a physical product, while another part of the game still required the console to confirm a license, retrieve missing content, or communicate with an online service. That does not make physical media useless. It makes the label incomplete. The meaningful question is not simply whether the game has a box. It is whether the copy remains playable when the network is unavailable. Preservation groups test this directly by installing games without internet access and recording what works. Their findings show a mixed reality. Many physical games provide strong offline functionality. Others provide an incomplete, outdated, or inaccessible experience without additional downloads. The difference usually cannot be understood from the front of the package alone. That leaves players trying to evaluate several different versions of ownership. A complete disc that functions without a server. A disc that installs most of the game but needs patches. A box containing a code. A permanent digital purchase tied to an account. A subscription entry available only while the membership and catalog access remain active. These products can all be described casually as buying or getting a game. They do not provide the same control. The industry is moving further into that complexity. Sony has announced that physical disc production for new PlayStation releases will end beginning in January 2028. Existing games and previously produced discs are not scheduled to suddenly stop working, but future new releases will move into digital formats. This matters beyond PlayStation. A temporary Xbox outage shows what can happen when account and license systems fail. Sony's physical policy shows how much more dependent future libraries may become on those systems. The problem is not that one company is good and the other is bad. The larger market is rewarding the same direction. Digital distribution removes manufacturing and shipping costs. It eliminates physical inventory problems. It gives the platform storefront greater control over sales. It reduces the influence of used game markets. It gives publishers more direct relationships with customers. It also matches how a large share of players already choose to buy games. Digital distribution is not being forced into a market that completely rejects it. Players have helped make it dominant because it is convenient. That is what makes the ownership conflict difficult. The system many players distrust is also the system many players prefer using. The Xbox outage did not invent this trade. It made the trade visible. Dan Houser's recent comments captured that tension better than the louder headlines surrounding them. Houser helped create Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption before leaving Rockstar. He now leads Absurd Ventures and does not speak for Rockstar or Take-Two. During a Comic-Con conversation, he did not attack digital distribution. He acknowledged that digital updates can improve quality. He also said that when people want physical media, companies should provide it. That is a more useful position than pretending one format is perfect. Digital systems can improve games after release. Physical options can preserve player choice. The conflict begins when convenience stops being an option and becomes the only route available. Grand Theft Auto 6 has become part of that discussion because its physical packaging has been connected to code-based distribution rather than a traditional playable disc in the box. A box can remain on the retail shelf. A collector can still display it. A customer can still describe the purchase as physical. But if the only functional content is a code tied to an account and a regional storefront, the box is no longer preserving the game. It is merchandise carrying permission to download it. That difference matters for resale, lending, preservation, region compatibility, and long-term access. Hauser did not directly condemn that model. He did not announce a change. His comments matter because they show that even someone who appreciates digital updates can understand why players still want a physical choice, and players are now trying to prove how strongly they want it. A preservation-focused campaign has called for a PlayStation blackout from August 23rd through August 30th. The organizers are asking participants to avoid signing in, avoid playing through Sony's platforms, and avoid making purchases during the protest window. The goal is to turn frustration over physical media into measurable consumer action. This is a genuinely new stage of the conversation. Complaining online is easy for a platform holder to absorb. A negative post does not automatically reduce revenue. A petition can demonstrate sentiment without proving that the people signing it will change their behavior. A blackout tries to create a clearer signal. No logins, no play sessions, no store purchases. The question is whether enough players will participate for Sony to notice. That cannot be answered yet. The protest has not happened. Social engagement does not equal participation. Petition signatures do not equal lost purchases. And no reliable participation total can exist before August 23rd. The campaign therefore represents a test of player leverage rather than evidence that player leverage has already succeeded. Gaming history contains examples of consumer backlash changing policy. The Helldivers. Two-account requirement controversy is one of the clearest recent cases. Players organized around a specific demand. Negative reviews spread rapidly. The consequences became visible on a major storefront. The publisher changed direction. Other campaigns became famous for the opposite reason. Players joined boycott groups, declared that they would not purchase a game, and then appeared online playing it after release. The protest became a meme rather than an economic threat. The difference is usually not how angry the audience sounds. It is how focused the demand is and whether the behavior creates a measurable consequence. A successful campaign usually needs several things: a clear policy target, a specific request, a large enough group, participation that lasts beyond social media posts, pressure on reviews, purchases, subscriptions, engagement, or another metric the company values, coverage that expands beyond the original community, and an action the platform can take without breaking its entire business strategy. The PlayStation blackout has a clear target: keep meaningful physical options available. Its difficult problem is scale. PlayStation serves an enormous global audience. A loud preservation community can be deeply committed while still representing a small portion of total platform activity. Turning off a console for 1 week may create a symbolic message without changing long-term revenue. Avoiding purchases could matter more. Canceling recurring subscriptions could create a stronger financial signal, but that is a much larger commitment than logging out temporarily. Third-party publishers would also be affected by reduced purchases, which complicates the target. Sony may interpret a short activity decline as temporary noise unless the campaign is large, sustained, and clearly connected to physical media. That does not make the protest meaningless. Symbolic action can build awareness, organize communities, and force coverage of an issue that a company would rather treat as settled. It can also reveal how many players are willing to sacrifice convenience for control. The Xbox outage gives the campaign a powerful piece of evidence. Players are being asked to imagine a future where physical choices shrink and libraries depend more heavily on accounts and servers. Then a real network failure arrives and blocks some players from games already inside their consoles. The outage does not prove that every digital library will disappear. It shows why people are uncomfortable allowing digital systems to become the only systems. The strongest counter-argument is also the reason those systems will continue growing. Digital gaming is incredibly convenient. A player can purchase a game at midnight and begin downloading immediately. The copy cannot be scratched, misplaced, or left at another house. Cloud saves can restore progress after replacing hardware. Remote installation can prepare a game before the player gets home. Automatic updates can repair bugs and improve performance. A subscription can provide access to more games than many people could afford to purchase individually. Account recovery can restore a library after a console fails. Cross-device systems can make a purchase or save available on several screens. Most gaming sessions happen without the player thinking about authentication at all. A service outage lasting several hours feels dramatic because the service normally works. Millions of smooth license checks produce no headline. One major failure exposes the dependency behind them. A fair evaluation has to recognize both realities. Digital distribution has improved access. Digital distribution has centralized control. Physical media can improve independence. Physical media does not guarantee complete offline functionality. Subscriptions can create extraordinary value. Subscriptions provide access rather than permanent possession. Platforms have legitimate reasons to verify licenses. Players have legitimate reasons to expect purchased games to work when a network fails. The problem is not digital technology itself. The problem is building systems where convenience requires surrendering more control than the player realizes. Players cannot redesign Xbox or PlayStation licensing systems themselves. They can reduce some of their exposure. On Xbox, the most important step is confirming which console is designated as the home Xbox. That setting allows many digital purchases to function offline on the designated machine. Players should not wait for an outage to discover whether the correct console is configured. Open the settings while services are working. Confirm the home designation. Launch the games that matter most. Download required content and updates. Then test them with the console offline. A successful offline test provides more useful information than assuming that a single-player label guarantees independence. Players who share libraries across multiple consoles should understand that the non-home console may require more frequent authentication. Game Pass users should remember that subscription access has different conditions from a permanent purchase. A game available through the subscription today can depend on the membership, the catalog, and successful authorization. Buying the game separately can create a more durable entitlement, but it still operates inside the platform account system. Physical buyers should check what is actually contained on the disk. Preservation databases can help identify whether a game installs completely offline, requires downloads, or becomes severely limited without a network. Buying a box without checking its contents can create the appearance of ownership without the protection the buyer expected. Players should also protect the accounts controlling their libraries. Use secure account recovery information. Maintain access to the connected email address. Use strong authentication. Understand regional restrictions before purchasing codes from another market. Keep required patches installed when possible. Backup saves through supported methods. None of these steps creates perfect independence. They reduce preventable vulnerability. The larger responsibility still belongs to the platform holders. Microsoft can improve how licenses are cached and how consoles behave during authentication failures. Publishers can clearly label whether physical releases contain the full game. Platforms can design offline modes that do not require players to predict an outage. Companies can maintain physical options where demand remains strong. Storefronts can explain what happens to digital libraries if services change. Regulators and courts may eventually influence how digital purchases are described. But the immediate issue is simpler. Players should understand what they are buying. A purchase should not feel like permanent possession when the product behaves like conditional permission. A subscription should not be discussed as ownership. A code inside a box should not be mistaken for a preserved physical copy. A disk should not be assumed complete without evidence. And a temporary outage should not be exaggerated into proof that every digital game is about to vanish. The July 27th disruption was temporary. Microsoft worked to restore service. There is no evidence that purchases were permanently revoked. Not every player was locked out. Not every game failed. Some offline configurations worked as intended. The cause and full technical postmortem were not publicly complete at the time of research. The PlayStation blackout also remains an upcoming event. Its participation cannot yet be measured. Sony has not reversed the physical media policy. Dan Houser does not control Rockstar distribution. Future Grand Theft Auto 6. Disk plans remain uncertain beyond the formats already announced. Those boundaries do not weaken the story. They reveal the precise conclusion. Modern players still possess real access to the games they purchase, but that access is increasingly mediated by systems they do not control. The platform can determine how a license is verified. The publisher can determine what exists on a disk. The storefront can determine regional availability. The subscription can determine which games remain accessible. The server can determine whether the system recognizes the player at that moment. Digital ownership is therefore not meaningless. It is conditional. The conditions usually remain invisible because the system normally works. An outage makes them visible. Physical media remains valuable because it can reduce those conditions, support resale and lending, and preserve local data. Its protection depends on whether the product actually contains a functioning game. Player protests remain valuable because they can communicate that control and preservation matter. Their influence depends on whether enough people translate sentiment into measurable behavior. Digital convenience is not going away. Most players are not going to abandon instant downloads, cloud saves, subscriptions, and account-based libraries. The realistic goal is not to reverse every digital system. It is to demand that convenience includes resilience. A purchased single-player game should have a reasonable path to offline play. A physical release should clearly disclose whether the game is complete. An outage should not turn a fully installed library into a wall of license errors. Players should be given enough information to choose between access, ownership, and preservation. The next important moment comes in August. The PlayStation Blackout will test whether the physical media audience is large and organized enough to create a visible platform signal. Sony's response, if one comes, will show whether the company views the protest as meaningful consumer pressure or temporary noise. Microsoft's response to the outage also matters. A technical explanation is useful. A licensing design that protects offline access during the next disruption would matter more. The future of game ownership will not be decided by one outage, one policy, or 1 week without PlayStation logins. It will be decided by thousands of smaller decisions about how games are sold, authenticated, stored, updated, preserved, and taken away. Players are not powerless inside that system. But the outage showed that paying for the game does not always place the final decision in the player's hands. The game may be installed, the disc may be inserted, the purchase may appear in the account history, and the platform may still need to say yes. That is the hidden condition behind modern game ownership. The real fight is not between digital and physical. It is between convenience that respects the player and convenience that quietly replaces control. GamingRealm is built to take messy gaming news and turn it into a clear story about what is actually changing. And what changed during this outage was not the ownership agreement itself. Players were simply forced to see it.